Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We're gathered today on the 23rd of the second month on our Creator's calendar, which happens to line up with May 3rd, 2025 on the Gregorian calendar. And we are continuing with our reading chronologically through the scriptures. We just finished with the book of Yobelim, and now Jubilees for everyone who's not familiar with that. Yobelim is the Hebrew way of pronouncing the word. The letter J switched for the yod, but that's not important at this point. Either way, we just finished the book of Yobelim, where Moshe, on the 16th day of the third month, went up for 40 days and 40 nights after giving the covenant to the people. They're saying three times everything that he says we will hear and do, and they ratified it with blood on the 15th day, keeping Shavuot, like a type of the renewed covenant or being born again, the type of every covenant that was made. Then the next day is when the book of Yobelim began, and then after that, which we just finished, would be after the 40 days and 40 nights where he's coming out to speak with the children. So then we know, if you're familiar, the golden calf incident happens, and then he has to go back up for another 40 days and 40 nights, and that would be when he went back up, would be new wine. And then when the events happen again, and they keep it in obedience because he's not trying to be vindictive, but he requires the things that he said. So he requires the things that he requires. So when he was given a period of 40 days of trial with Moshe being up there and the people being without him, they failed in it. He let them do it again so they could be successful. There's a way of training us there, but it's also a picture of the things to come. There's a lot more involved that we have to keep in mind. And it's never about being condemning of the people before us. Everything that's written is for our edification, not for our judging others, right? But back in point, today's the 23rd. So on for the counting of the Omar, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks today. And this also is a day of significance from the Maccabean period, but I cannot at this time recall what exactly that was significant of. The 14th day of the second month here is the second Pesach, and it's also the 40th day after Adam was created, where he went into the Garden of Eden. So these are appointed times there. It's the only reason why I have it on the map is because it was or the calendar because it was second Passover, but it happens to fit that pattern as well. And then every time they had a deliverance where they wanted to remember it or acknowledge what he had done, I put uh, a marker on here. Whether people want to do that or not, I leave that to you, but I was acknowledging them for what they were, just for context. So either way, we're continuing here. We're on day 28 of counting the Omar. It's the 23rd of the second month, and we are now going back into the book of Exodus or Shemot. Before we do, excuse me, before we do, I wanted to cover real quick what we had mentioned. I don't know if you can see the chat for our Zoom meeting here. I just popped up on my screen, but if you can't, please just bear with me, and I'm sorry. If you are able to see it, great. But we had mentioned before that the book of Exodus is out of chronological order, and we had talked about what the proper order was. After that time, our sister, one of them on here, had mentioned a teaching from another brother, Scott Whitman, and where he had had chapter 18 placed in a specific, uh, in a different place in the order than where we read it already. So I'm going to put it in the order that he mentions, although just a cursory view here when I was looking through it, it does not seem to quite fit. And it could be our fault. We could be off on where it is here. So I need to get full clarity on that. But chapter 18 aside, everything else here is pretty much spot on for its natural chronological order in how you should read it. And that would be chapters 1 through 17 Then chapters 19 through 24, and all of that we've already read. At the end of,
Oh,
at the end of 24, we went to the book of Yobelim, and then it says chapter 18 here. Then you would go to chapter 32 through 34, which is what we'll be covering starting today. Then we'll go back to chapter 25 through 31, and then you'll finish off with chapters 35 through 40. And that will cover the chronological generally. I don't know if chapter 18 is right there, but that generally covers the right order of the events there. If you read it in that order, you'll see what really happened and why. Potentially, if you think about it, you'll realize why it was mixed up. The adversary wants to hide the truth. But the fact that he went up on the mountain, was given the revelation of the book of Yobelim, was given the common law, which we've already read, and then after he went down and saw the golden calf, the things that had transpired, and he went back up the second time, that was when they got the information for the wilderness tabernacle and
so,
for
so I brought that other Delta 8 over. Right?
Aharon and his sons being chosen for
Delta 8.
the line of the Kohanim and whatnot. So either way, Father willing, you'll see that in the course of what we're reading here as we go. And if you all have any questions, don't hesitate to ask us, okay? Getting back on the book at hand here. Uh, oh, sorry, I have it right here. Let me make this full screen. And then this is an online resource where it has the Septuagint on one side, the left here, and it has the KJV with what they say is restored names on the right. I like this version so you can see the differences. We're not going to be focusing on that right now, but I will point out one or two things as we go. Like there's a missing verse in the Septuagint that is in the KJV. But other than that, we'll just stick to or focus on the Septuagint version here for the sake of continuity and because this one is not, or this is the one we're least familiar with. I'm more familiar with the KJV and derivatives of that than this one. I was recently reading through the Septuagint version of Exodus with my family, and we noticed quite a few differences in our hard copy. I'm hoping we can see here as well. Nothing overly negative, but there's nuances or there's super added features, names and reasons for things that are pointed out that are missing from the Masoretic text version. But we'll go ahead and continue here. Chapter 32 says, And when the people saw that Moshe delayed to come down from the mountain, the people complained against Aharon and said to him, Arise and make us Elohim who shall go before us? For this Moshe, the man who brought us forth out of the land of Mitzrayim, we do not know what is become of him. And Aharon says to them, Take off the golden earrings which are in the ears of your wives and daughters, and bring them to me. And all the people took off the golden earrings that were in their ears, and brought them to Aharon. And he received them at their hands, and formed them with a graving tool. And he made them a molten calf, and said, These, or this is your Elohim, Yisrael, which brought you up out of the land of Mitzrayim. So he equated a calf that eats hay or grass with Yahuwah who delivered the children. And this was a great offense to our Maker. We don't see the significance of it so much when we read just the plain text here, but when we get to the apostolic constitutions and when we get to the heresies section of it, and it's recapitulating the history of the errors that were brought in over time, you'll see how grave of an offense this was after his so many and great deliverances and what he had done for them. To just fall back on this kind of error when they had been taken out of it. But we'll continue here. And Aharon, having seen it, built an altar before it. And Aharon made proclamation, saying, Tomorrow is a feast of Yahuwah, attributing a feast to this thing and saying it is for Yahuwah, using his name even, because that wasn't there, that's a title. But he used his name and said this feast that they just made up, that they use pagan worship for, is for him. It's quite like what is done today, but this is the result that they had here, and this is what we should be very mindful of. And having risen early on the morrow, he offered whole burnt offerings and offered a shalom offering, and the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, Go quickly, descend hence from your or for your people whom you brought out of the land of Mitzrayim have transgressed. The I want to see. There's three different words they use for sin. This one says corrupted themselves. Okay. So that's corrupted themselves. That's not the word for transgressed. There's normally three different words. You have the sin, transgression, and inequity in the KJV. This wouldn't be any of those. This would have been that they had, as you've seen, that they had corrupted or caused to be ruined themselves.
Debased.
Debased, yes. It says, They have quickly gone out of the way which you commanded. They have made for themselves a calf and worshipped it. See, that was the breaking of it. They made it and they bowed down to it. The very thing he said not to do. A lot of people they get issues with even making drawings or taking pictures or doing things, but we have to be discerning in these things. Moshe had images that were commanded to be made on the Ark of the Covenant itself. The mercy seat on either side was a messenger. You had it on the patterns on the veil and throughout the tabernacle. You had Shalomo making it throughout the Hikkel. They had images in gemstones of flowers and other things, if you look at what Josephus mentions, and none of that was ever attributed to them as sins because they didn't worship them. It wasn't bowed down to, they didn't offer sacrifices to it. It's when you do that that it becomes wrong. Just for the distinction there. There was at one point, and I'll be honest with you, I was not wanting to try to whittle because I didn't know better. But that kind of thing is not legitimate. We have to go by what he said and the examples that we have in scripture and not just whatever comes to our own mind or whatever opinions other people have, right? And I mention that because that's the important thing. Every one of us is going to be standing on and judged by the law or his words as it's given that we know that's available in our times. That's what he said. That's what we have to go by. If you go by other things, then you're now placing a different teacher other than Mashiach before you. And that's something that we ought not to do. So it says, and they worshipped it and sacrificed to it and said, These are your Elohim, Yisrael, who brought you up out of the land of Mitzrayim. And it says that verse 9 is absent from the Septuagint here, but that one says, And Yahuwah said unto Moshe, I have seen this people, and behold, it is a stiff-necked people, which is quoted elsewhere as well. And now let me alone, and I will be very angry with them and consume them, and I will make you a great nation. that great nation, this is a positive injunction or a promise given to Moshe by Yahuwah that was never recanted. And there's commentaries, there's things that men have written about this. As Moshe was a type of our Mashiach, you see that echoed in his own people, the whole way it plays out in history. If you have the time to look, it's rather interesting. But with Moshe himself, his children becoming a great nation happened after the northern kingdom was taken into dispersion. There was an area on the eastern, southeastern edge of the Black Sea, which was known as Greater and Lesser Mosia, or the people or land of Moses, the people of Moshe. And it was systematically conquered by the Romans, and those people were dispersed in the course of time to where they were wiped out as a nation. And even if you look at it today, they say that the Mosea people were not real. They literally try to hide or make them cease to be a people in the world, just like as a microcosm of the peoples conspiring to make the name of Yisrael and his people be remembered no more when they're conspiring against his hidden ones, as it's mentioned in the Psalms. So that's like an echo of the larger pattern. The same thing you can see with all the sons of Louis, as they, it says, so with the Kohen, as with the people, so with the Kohen, as with the people, so with the king. They live out in a microcosm what's going on in their people in a larger scale. And you can see that with that history of his children specifically there too. But continuing, it says, and Moshe prayed before Yahuwah Elohim and said, wherefore, Yahuwah, are you very angry with your people, whom you brought out of the land of Mitzrayim, with great strength and with your high arm? Take heed or beware, right? That's in italics, but the idea is he's asking a question, and he says, least at any time the Egyptians or Mitzrayites speak, saying, with evil intent he brought them out to slay them in the mountains and to consume them from off the earth. Cease from your wrathful anger and be merciful to the sin of your people, remembering Abraham and Yitzhak and Jacob, your servants, to whom you have sworn by yourself and have spoken to them. So I just want to point out he's not appealing to the forgive the people for their sake, but for his name's sake, for his character's sake, for his reputation's sake. Literally, because he is merciful and kind, and his reputation is at stake and how he would be perceived by others, blasphemed because of them amongst the nations, if you will. So that was the intercession of Moshe that was acknowledged and accepted here. But it says, remembering Abraham and Yitzhak and Jacob, your servants, to whom you have sworn by yourself, and have spoken to them, saying, I will greatly multiply your seed as the stars of Shamayim, for multitude, and all this land which you spoke of to give to them, so that they shall possess it forever. And Yahuwah was prevailed upon to preserve his people. And Moshe turned and went down from the mountain, and the two tables of testimony were in his hands, tables of stone written on both their sides. They were written within and without. And Ron Wyatt said that they had the commandments on both sides, both ways, so you can read all 10, regardless of which way it was facing. They were connected by golden bands at the point where he had them, and you could open it up and turn them around. Says, in the tables were the copy that Ron Wyatt would have seen and was witnessing would have been the second copy, not this one, but the one that was made after it. And the tables were the work of Elohim, and the writing of Elohim written on the tables. And Yahushua, having heard the voice of the people crying, says to Moshe, there is a noise of war in the camp. And Moshe says, it is not the voice of them that began in battle, nor the voice of them that began of defeat, but the voice of them that began of wine do I hear. And when he drew nigh to the camp, he sees the calf and the dances, and Moshe, being very angry, cast the two tables out of his hands, and broke them to pieces under the mountain. And having taken the calf which they made, he consumed it with fire, and ground it very small, and scattered it on the water, and made the children of Israel to drink it. And that's the bitter waters. This whole episode that we read, you're going to see an echo of that in Numbers. I believe it's 15. It might be chapter, it might be a different chapter. But when the ruach or spirit of jealousy enters upon a man and he's jealous over his wife, thinking that she might have been unfaithful, the instructions given for that and the cursed waters that she's supposed to drink and what happens is a parallel, I think, of what happens right here with the people. And Moshe said to Aharon, what has this people done to you, that you have brought upon them a great sin? And Aharon said to Moshe, be not angry, master, for you know the impetuosity of this people. Excuse me, I don't need to do that. For anyone who might not know what this word means, okay? Impetuous, acting or done quickly and without thought or care. So we'd say hastily done, carelessly, all right? For they say to me, make us mighty ones, or make us Elohim, which shall go before us. For as for this man Moshe, who brought us out of Mitzrayim, we do not know what is become of him. And I said to them, if anyone has golden ornaments, take them off. And they gave them me, and I cast them into the fire, and there came out this calf. And when Moshe saw that the people were scattered, for Aharon scattered them, a rejoicing to their enemies, then stood Moshe at the gate of the camp, and said, who is on Yahuwah's side? Or who is to Yahuwah, or for Yahuwah? Let him come to me. Then all the sons of Lewi came to him. And this is the type of Lewi being chosen amongst all his brothers again, an echo of that. You see, he was chosen because he repented at the hearing of the call from Moshe. These are these are in parables. I'm just trying to point out to you in simple forms the things that you can see here, right? And he says to them, thus says Yahuwah Elohim of Yisrael, put everyone his sword on his thigh, and go through and return from gate to gate through the camp, and slay every one his brother, and every one his neighbor, and every one him that is nearest to him. And the sons of Lewi, or the sons of those joined unto me, did as Moshe spoke to them, and there fell of the people in that day to the number 3,000 men, just like the 3,000 that were delivered or rescued at the coming of our Mashiach, a type of the type like unto Moshe, right? And Moshe said to them, you have filled your hands this day to Yahuwah, each one on his son or on his brother, so that Barakah should be given to you. And it came to pass after the morrow that Moshe said to the people, you have sinned a great sin. And now I will go up to Elohim, that he may, or that I may make atonement for your sin. And Moshe returned to Yahuwah and said, I pray, Yahuwah, this people has sinned a great sin. and they have made for themselves golden Elohim. And now, if you will forgive their sin, forgive, and if not, blot me out of your book, which you have written, the book, the Lamb's book of life, which, if you all remember, it's mentioned in a few places, Revelation and the epistles, that I believe Shaul's epistle about Clement being in the book of life. You find a full revelation of this in Gad the Seer, chapter 14, and it happens every not Shavuot, but every Yom Teruah, the first day of the seventh month, one of the Chodesh, one of the four remembrance days of the year, is when he has his messengers and the hosts of the Shamayim appear before him, and the three books are opened. And Yahushua reads them out to the Father, and he says that the righteous are his. Those that are unintentional sinners, he's going to hold off his judgment for a third of the month until the Day of Atonement. And for the rest of them, the malicious wicked, or for the unrepentant sinners that don't keep the Day of Atonement, he's given them over to Satan to take them into the wilderness to destroy them. And that's done on a yearly basis. And Moshe, sorry, and it's blot me out of your book, which you have written. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, if anyone has sinned against me, I will blot them out of my book. And now go, descend, and lead this people into the place of which I spoke to you. Now, this is how he is. If he won't directly fulfill the will of those that deserve it, he always explains to them why. And those that, like, he speaks face to face, he tells them right to him why, or yes or no, and the reasons for it every time. Even when he tells them, no, you're not going into the wilderness, and this is why, right? He's still straight to him because he, Moshe, reaps the thing that he sows. I want you to keep that in mind. And now go, descend, and lead this people into the place of which I spoke to you. Behold, my messenger shall go before your face, and in the day when I shall visit, I will bring upon them their sin. The day of his visitation, their own, they're going to have issues. We've covered that before, the two ways and the two ruach, or spirits that are in you, and what it's like at the time of his visitation when that happens. We see it in the account of the good news and how he treated different people based on the spirit that was in them, literally. And it's also the condition of how we are and how the truth responds to us collectively as people throughout this time until he gathers us and visits again. And then we're going to get either the melting away at his wrath or being made like him. And Yahuwah smote the people for the making the calf, which Aharon made. And that was the plague that came through after this time. All right, and this is chapter 33. Excuse me. It says, and Yahuwah said to Moshe, go forward, go up hence, you and your people, whom you brought out of the land of Mitzrayim, into the land which I swore to Abraham, and Yitzhak, and Jacob, saying, I will give it to your seed. And I will send at the same time my messenger before your face, and he shall cast out the Amorite, and Hittite, and the Pezerite, and Girgashite, and Hivite, and Jebusite, and Canaanite. The Canaanite being mentioned separately, even though they're all sons of Canaan, because these were the ones, and this was what was mentioned in some of these other writings that talk about it. There's a great many believers in the Reformation period, a great many sincere people were studying the truth, trying to figure things out and writing about it. I'm not saying that they had everything accurate, but there's a lot that we can learn from the sincerity of these men who were shown the truth as they were able to receive him, right? They make the claim that the ones that were individually named were the ones that were in the land violating it and originally took that area that was allotted to um, Shem in the Levant, if you want to call it that. The Canaanites here were the separate, where they had left that area. They went into the land of Ham, or they were intermixing, then came back. And that's why it was mentioned as separate. Okay, to continue here, it says, whether or not that's true, I don't know for certain, but that was the reasoning given. And it says, and I will bring you into a land flowing with milk and honey. And the honey bee is indigenous to that area originally. It was the only sweet in antiquity was from the honey, and the milk and honey being flowing there was a providence that was a very special gift at the time. It says, for I will not go up with you, because you are a stiff-necked people, lest I consume you by the way. Now, this could be very confusing, and I don't mean to keep doing this, but I want to point something out. It's not the Father speaking face to face with Moshe, because no man has seen the Father's face and lives. But Yahushua, who appeared to men as a man who was called Yahuwah, is the one that was in the burning bush speaking to Moshe. And for anyone that wants direct, plain spoken proof of that, you can read about it in the Apostolic Constitutions and in um, the Against Heresies by Irenaeus, where they directly quote these texts and point these things out, which are the same things that the emissaries are saying, but because of the translations and the tampering with the word, it is not so easily seen in the renewed covenant writings. When you look at the placeholders and where it should literally say Yahuwah, Yahushua, Mashiach all over them, then it's very easy to see. But without that, you're left trying to piece this together like a detective. So truth and reason being hand in hand, we know that no man can see him and speak with him face to face, but we can speak with our Mashiach. He was the one who was like the messenger that goes before his people, but they were his people, and he was the Yahuwah leading them. And the messenger he is speaking of is the one who is like El, or Mikael, who is the messenger appointed over the righteous remnant of his people, as mentioned in Daniel and fully explained in the book called The Shepherd of Hermas, where it's plainly mentioned that the ones that are obedient to the law, that have not perverted or turned from it, have Mikael over them, who is the one like unto El, where they cannot be there, while our Mashiach has gone after the lost sheep. Okay? In reality, he's sovereign over all. He was given all authority from the Father, and he rules with an iron scepter, as it mentions, and he's at the right hand of the Father until all is put and subdued and made his footstool, or that upon which his feet tread, like the regale, like the king putting his foot on the neck of his enemies, is another way you can see that. But back on point here. I just want to point out the messenger he's talking about, our Mashiach, he's talking about leaving Mikael over them, and he intercedes to have him be over the stiff-necked people. That's what the significance of this is, in exact agreement with what you see revealed later on in the books and places I just mentioned. It says, and I will bring you into a land flowing with milk and honey, for I will not go up with you, because you are a stiff-necked people, lest I consume you by the way. And the people, having heard this grievous saying, mourned in mourning apparel. For Yahuwah said to the children of Yisrael, you are a stiff-necked people. Take heed, lest I bring on you another plague and destroy you. Now then, put off your glorious apparel and ornaments, and I will show you what I will do to you. So you see, they used their ornaments and jewelry to make the idol, and they danced and made their apparel before it. So his correction is, now you give me those things that you gave to it, and you take off the stuff that you used it for it, and you repent, and then I'll see what I'm going to do about it. So the sons of Yisrael took off their ornaments and their array at the moment, or at the mount of Horeb. And Moshe took his tabernacle and pitched it without the camp, at a distance from the camp. And it was called the tabernacle of testimony. And it came to pass, every one that sought Yahuwah went forth to the tabernacle which was without the camp, because the camp was no longer clean for him to dwell in. Right? And this is the same thing, the tabernacle of testimony, being like the city of Yerushalayim, where the temple was. It was that entire city was set apart. People had to be clean to come into it at one point before the enemies took it over. You find that clear um, in the Dead Sea Scrolls, what's called the Temple Scroll, goes into the details about that. And whenever Moshe went into the tabernacle without the camp, all the people stood, every one watching by the doors of his tent. And when Moshe departed, they took notice until he entered into the tabernacle. And when Moshe entered into the tabernacle, the pillar of the cloud descended and stood at the door of the tabernacle and talked to Moshe. And all the people saw the pillar of the cloud standing by the door of the tabernacle, and all the people stood and worshipped, every one at the door of his tent. It mentions in the Proverbs or other places that the wicked will bow before the righteous. And this is literally what you see them doing before Moshe in his obedience before Elohim. While they're bowing to Elohim, Moshe is there, and it was a type. As you esteem Elohim, or as you value the Son, so you value the Father, and he will value you, kind of picture there, right? The idea of turning Moshe into an idol, where he would be a replacement and worshipped as Elohim, was thwarted by the removal of his bones after his death, and where the people couldn't find it anymore, or his resurrection, if you will. And all the people saw the pillar, oh, I'm sorry, and they worshipped, right? And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe face to face, as if one should speak to his friend. And he retired into the camp, but his servant Yahushua, the son of Nun, like the son of life, a young man departed not forth from the tabernacle. And Moshe said to Yahuwah, behold, you say to me, lead on this people, but you have not shown me whom you will send with me. But you have said to me, I know you above all, and you have favor with me. If then I have found favor in your sight, reveal yourself to me, that I may evidently see you, that I may find favor in your sight, and that I may know that this great nation is your people. And this is where we get the identity that the one he's speaking with is not the Father. Just to make it unequivocal, the Yahuwah that he is face to face with is not the Yahuwah Elohim that is the Father and only true Elohim, but he is the mediator between Elohim and men. Right? And he says, I myself will go before you and give you rest. And he says to him, if you go not up with us yourself, bring me not up hence. And how shall it be surely known that both I and this people have found favor with you, except only if you go with us? So both I and your people shall be esteemed beyond all the nations, as many as are upon the earth. And that pillar of cloud and pillar of fire was with them in the tabernacle of testimony over the mercy seat, and then leading them in their journey. And then it was put in the tabernacle of witness. It was taken again, but they had his presence. Again, when the Hikel or temple was dedicated by Shalomo, you can see his presence there in the pillar of the cloud, the brightness that where they couldn't do their service because they couldn't see or go in it. That presence was removed after the time of, or yeah, after the time of the Maccabees or contemporary with it, for what the people had been doing. So, and then it was no longer amongst them in that capacity. Excuse me one moment. All right, we'll continue. It says, and Yahuwah said to Moshe, I will also do for you this thing which you have spoken, for you have found favor before me, and I know you above all. And Moshe says, manifest yourself to me. And Elohim said, I will pass before you with my esteem, and I will call by my name, Yahuwah, before you. And I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy, and I will have pity on whom I will have pity. And Elohim said, you shall not be able to see my face, for no man shall see my face and live. And Yahuwah said, behold, there is a place by me, you shall stand upon the rock. And when my esteem shall pass by, then I will put you into the hole of a rock, or the rock, and I will cover you over with my hand until I have passed by. And I will remove my hand, and then you shall see my back parts, or the what's left of his manifestation, right? But my face shall not appear to you. And please, if you keep in mind this is a parable, he's trying to show him that you can't see the Father, but you stand on the rock, so you stand on Mashiach, and you're covered by Mashiach, and his Mashiach, who is his esteem, the esteem of Elohim bodily, right? So Mashiach will pass by, and then you'll see what's left of it, which is the remnants of Mashiach. It's all the different ways he's manifested us to us through his Son. Everything done through him. If you can see that picture. And the whole point was to show us the things that would be plainly spoken in the renewed covenant times there. So we got one more chapter here before this section is over chronologically with chapter 34. And this would have been taking place with the intermission from the time that he came down, right? Shavuot, or I'm sorry, 40 days after. And then when he would have went back up to the mountain for the next 40 days and 40 nights, which we will get to when we continue reading here. But that would have been, as I believe Scott Whitman, a brother, had been sharing, that would have been on new wine on our Creator's counter that we had showed earlier. Okay. But either way, I believe that's right here. Yeah. So let me shrink that down real quick. You can see, oop, Shavuot right here. This is the 16th days when he went up, and then 40 days and 40 nights, and he would have came to them on new wine when the tablets were broken. And then, or I'm sorry, 40 days and 40 nights would have been over here, and then he would have done the things with the golden calf. He would have instituted what happened, and then he goes back up on new wine for the next 40 days and 40 nights. Excuse me. So, chapter 34. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, hew for yourself 2 tables of stone, as also the first were, and come up to me to the mountain. And I will write upon the tables the words which were on the first tables which you broke. And he wrote with his finger. Ron Wyatt described it like it was written as if it was soft clay when it was first written and then dried that way. Literally written with a finger in the way that it was inscribed on the tablets that he was able to see himself. And be ready by the morning, and you shall go up to Mount Sinai, and shall stand there for me on the top of the mountain. And let no one go up with you, nor be seen in all the mountain. And let not the sheep and oxen feed near that mountain. And Moshe hewed 2 tables of stone, and also the first, or as also the first were. And Moshe, having arisen early, went up to the Mount Sinai, as Yahuwah appointed him. And Moshe took the 2 tables of stone, And Yahuwah descended in a cloud and stood near him there, and called by the name of Yahuwah. And Yahuwah passed by before his face and proclaimed, Yahuwah Elohim. Now, in the Masoretic version, it says that he says Yahuwah, Yahuwah, right? He says it twice. But right here it says, Yahuwah Elohim, pitiful and merciful, long-suffering and very compassionate and true, and keeping right ruling and mercy for thousands, taking away iniquity and unrighteousness and sins, and he will not clear the guilty, bringing the iniquity of the fathers upon the children and to the children's children, to the third and fourth generation. This is part of the commandments, but he's pointing out the facts that we can perceive if we're actually paying attention to what we've already read. Think about what the children did with Yahusuf and how they sold him into captivity, and how this is the third and fourth generation from those points that they came out, and they're still having some issues before that require correction. So it doesn't make it less true because the people aren't doing the right thing. It just um, makes us have to learn the hard way. And Moshe hastened and bowed to the earth and worshipped, and said, If I have found favor before you, let my master go with us, for the people is stiff-necked, and you shall take away our sins and our iniquities, and we will be yours. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, Behold, I establish a covenant for you in the presence of all your people. I will do splendorous things which have not been done in all the earth, or in any nation, and all the people among whom you are shall see the works of Yahuwah, that they are wonderful, which I will do for you. Now, that's after the Exodus. That's after all those miracles that just happened. And this is literally what has been going on from history, and especially what you can see in the book of Revelations, where these wonders are still happening. It says, Do you take heed to all things whatsoever I command you? Behold, I cast out before your face the Amorite and the Canaanite and the Pezerite and the Hittite and the Hivite and the Girgashite and Jebusite. Take heed to yourself, lest at any time you make a covenant with the dwellers on the land, into which you are entering, lest it be to you a stumbling block among you, because they swear by their false mighty ones and make oaths and offerings to them and eat covenant meals sacrificed to demons. And you shall destroy their altars, and break in pieces their pillars, and you shall cut down their groves, and the graven images of their mighty ones you shall burn with fire. For you shall not worship Elohim Achrim, or strange mighty ones, new ones that came lately, which your fathers did not know, right? And your fathers being Abraham, Yitzhak, and Jacob, who worshipped Yahuwah Elohim and him only. For you shall not worship Elohim Achrim, for Yahuwah Elohim, a jealous name, is a jealous El. And that word for jealousy, kana, is very similar to the word kana, which is for taking possession of or taking hold of something, right? He jealously guards his stuff, and he's very jealous about his name. He's a jealous El, right? Least at any time you make a covenant with the dwellers on the land, and they go a whoring after their mighty ones and sacrifice to their mighty ones, and they call you, and you should eat of their feasts and sacrifice to demons. This is directly mentioned in the renewed covenant writings on what we're supposed to avoid doing. It's mentioned right here too. These are two witnesses for these things, and that's another witness for dietary instructions being applicable, if you will, for a third and even easier one to see, because Unclean offerings are never offered to Yahuwah. There is no strange offerings. It's only what he appointed. And if you are meant to be his dwelling place, as a living Elohim dwells in you, you cannot bring those unclean offerings into his temple and expect them to be accepted. It is that simple. You can do it. All is all is permitted me, but not all is profit. All is permitted me, but I will not be made a slave to any, which you are a servant to the one you obey, life, righteousness unto life, or sin unto death. And it says, and you shall not make to yourself molten Elohim, and you shall keep the feast of unleavened bread. 7 days shall you eat unleavened bread, as I have charged you, at the season in the month of Abib. In the month of Abib, you came out from Mitzrayim. The males are mine, everything that opens the womb, every firstborn of oxen and firstborn of sheep. And if the firstborn is a woman or a female, then it's the next one, or however many women you have before your first male child. It is the male that is his, set apart for his purposes. Not, and I don't mean that to be rude. That's just what's stated plainly right here. And the firstborn of a donkey you shall redeem with a sheep. And if you will not redeem it, you shall pay a price. It mentions you shall break its neck in the Septuagint, right? Every firstborn of your sons you shall redeem, and you shall not appear before me empty. If you remember, he teaches through parables, and while the first covenant believers are like wild donkey men who were stubborn, they had to be redeemed with the lamb. It was that simple, and this was to teach that truth. And every one of them that would not be redeemed, it broke its neck. It did not have life in it, basically. 6 days you shall work, but on the seventh day you shall rest. Rest in seed time and harvest. And you shall keep to me the feast of weeks, the beginning of wheat harvest, and the feast of ingathering in the middle of the year. 3 times in the year shall every male of yours appear before Yahuwah, the Elohim of Yisrael. For when I shall have cast out the nations before your face, and shall have enlarged your coasts, no one shall desire your land, whenever you may go up to appear before Yahuwah your Elohim. When I shall have cast them out, not before then, but when he had cast them out. Until they were cast out, they were a thorn in their side, because they chose not to do what he said, right? But he says, and whenever you may go up to appear before Yahuwah your Elohim 3 times in the year. And this 3 times in the year is when they regaled, when they would go up before him. It's literally the word for the feet, if I remembered correctly. I'd have to look at the Hebrew to find it. It might not be mentioned directly right here, but the 3 times are the 3 feasts in which it's they call it the ingathering feast, but it's the ones where they put their foot to or they walked to gather together, and it was the same word, regel, where you get like the foot from Regulus, the Leo, the lion in the stars. Regulus is just the Latin suffix for the Hebrew regel. They're the foot treading upon the neck of the enemy kind of thing. But I don't know if that's the word right here, or if it was used elsewhere, so I'm sorry about that. And it says, and ye shall not offer the blood of my sacrifices with leaven, neither shall the sacrifices of the feast of the Passover remain till the morning. The first fruits of your land shall you put into the house of Yahuwah your Elohim. You shall not boil a lamb in his mother's milk. What was meant to sustain and nurture, you're not going to use to cook. Right? And Yahuwah said, and that's the only reference, there's nothing in here about not using cheese in a hamburger.
Hey, brother, just jump in. And in the Arabic culture,
Yes.
they boil a goat in milk. Yeah.
Directly contradiction to that injunction, huh?
Yeah. Maybe that. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a spiritual reason for it too, but that's applicable. And again, this isn't to be judgmental of any one people. It's to help us see things clearly because we're all in this life together. We're all combating to righteousness. Um, but the Arabic people, the mixed people there, the sons of Yishmael, he who will hear El, are the type of first covenant believers who needed the lamb's redemptive blood, like wild donkeymen. So this is the app, it's way it fits. The pattern is perfectly in line with all of that. And that's a sad reality that that's what they did. But when you look at when both the northern and the southern kingdoms respectively rejected the truth, both before and after he came in the flesh, you can see it reflected in the things they do being contrary to what he wills. As his ruach or spirit leaves, the adversaries is indwelling in you, and you become more and more apostate to the truth. That's just how it works. So thank you for sharing that, brother. I appreciate it. It says, and Yahuwah said to Moshe, write these words for yourself, for on these words I have established a covenant with you and with Israel. This is now an injunction different from what he originally gave, where they must show these three times. And this is where he's officially establishing where every one of them has to be there for what he's going to be doing for them on Pesach when he came, right? And Moshe was there before Yahuwah 40 days and 40 nights. He did not eat bread, and he did not drink water. And he wrote upon the tables these words of the covenant, the 10 sayings, meaning the he, meaning Yahushua again. He rewrote them. Moshe wrote down the writings, what we'd call Deuteronomy, Leviticus, and the other things, original copies of them. He would have been writing those for the people. The copies that we have now are copies of copies that were originally reestablished in the time of Ezra. And we'll get to this in the course of time. But as a type and shadow of the truth being hidden in the fourth beast, which is Rome, Babylon, when it came in, destroyed the scriptures and burned them. All right. And then it says, and when Moshe went down from the mountain, the after the 40 days and 40 nights, so a redoing of that thing to see if the people would be obedient, right? He says, and when he went down from the mountain, the two tables in the hands of Moshe, as then he went down from the mountain, Moshe knew not that the appearance of the skin of his face was esteemed when Elohim spoke to him. Now, he was glowing. He had light emanating from his face. And this is another thing to say that when Adam and Hua, before they sinned, they didn't know they were naked because they were covered in light as with a garment. Like when our Mashiach was manifested to three of his taught ones and his garments became bright like the white, brilliant white, and his face became as the sun for brightness. It's a type like that. We have actual evidence in earth sciences today. I don't know if our brother Josh Keefe, who does the creation standard, great stuff for earth science and how it's actually tying right in with scripture. I don't know if he's covered this or not, but they actually know in science that we all, everybody, reflects infrared light from the sun. We absorb sun, and some of it bounces off of us, just like it's reflected off, or I'm sorry, the sun's influence empowers the moon and the stars, which influence the earth in the same way that our Mashiach was given all authority. He empowers the kingdom and his taught ones to influence the world. So it's the same thing in creation is set up to teach us in pictures as types. But my point is, we actually know in science that's demonstrably proven that we shed light. It's infrared at this point, but before and at as time to be, it will be in other spectrums as well. So I thought that was really interesting. Recently learned that from my son. My third eldest son just turned 16 this year, and he'll be finishing his AA for college for our homeschooling. We're doing some stuff, but he's learning about that one, which sadly they institutionalize error, and he informed me the premise behind everything they do is atheistic. At its core, you have to believe that everything has only a natural answer and that there's no miracles or higher power. So it's at its core, they start with an atheistic approach to everything, which is absolutely opposite of how we even began looking at the sciences as a serious thing to begin with. It was all through his word that we did that. But we'll get to those things in the course of time as well. Either way, here it says, and Aharon and all the elders of Yisrael saw Moshe, and the appearance of the skin of his face was made glorious, or was glowing, was esteemed, and they feared to approach him. And Moshe called them, and Aharon and all the rulers of the synagogue. So when he appeared to them the second time, then he was esteemed, and the people were seeing it and feared. When our Mashiach returns, he comes in glory, as they say. That's the picture we're seeing, right? And afterwards all the children of Israel came to him, and he commanded them all things whatsoever Yahuwah had commanded him in the Mount of Sinai. And when he ceased speaking to them, he put on, or he put a veil on his face. And whenever Moshe went in before Yahuwah to speak to him, he took off the veil till he went out. And he went forth and spoke to all the children of Israel, whatsoever Yahuwah commanded him. And the children of Israel saw the face of Moshe, that it was esteemed. And Moshe put the veil over his face, till he went in to speak with him. And we will continue with those instructions that he gave and everything that was involved when we start reading again next week. But we'll be hopping backwards, as it seems, in the Bible, going back to chapters 25 and on, where they are now getting the instructions for the tabernacle of the witness, and Aharon being appointed as the Kohen with his children and all of that is involved there. So thank you all for your time. You have a wonderful rest of your Shabbat and a great week ahead, and we will see you next week. Shalom.